just, okay. Hi, everybody. Welcome. We are the LA Neighborhood Council Sustainability Alliance. Please put your name and your neighborhood council, if you belong to one, or your organization, etc., in the chat, and also what brought you here this evening. We work to advance sustainability and resilience across the city through advocacy, sharing of best practices, and community action. We have 4 really active committees and also a Youth Environmental Action Council are 4 committees. So, and we'll talk about these more towards the end of the evening. Our committees are advocacy, energy, transportation, and trees, and they're welcome to open to anybody in the city, any stakeholder in the city, and we'd love to have you involved in those. Our agenda tonight, we're going to dive into this very shortly. We're going to do some housekeeping, and then we're going to dive into the conversation with Public Bank LA. And then after that, and then we'll have a conversation that will be with Public Bank LA, and then we'll open it up to everybody. So we'll be very interactive, and we'll have a conversation with all of you. And then, as usual, we'll hear reports from all of our committees and have opportunities for announcements with everybody. And then we'll wrap up and try to be out of here by 8:30. And as always, we'll want to hear from you what you thought about this meeting. So we'll have opportunities for evaluations from everybody. We have community agreements that if one of our board members can put in the chat, that will be super helpful. This is not a super controversial topic, so I don't anticipate that we'll need to focus on this, but we do have community agreements. Our community agreements that I'll read really fast are, please, if you can, turn on your camera and show your face so we can always be continuing to build community. Assume good intent, give people the benefit of the doubt, demonstrate respect and appreciation, refrain from having too many side conversations in the chat, although we do love the chat and the chat is available to you. Listen intently, step forward and step back, meaning, we want to hear from everybody, and so we don't want to hear too much from anybody. And be concise and have fun. If you're just joining us, please put your introductions in the chat. Include your pronouns if you want to do that. We welcome pronouns, and now we'll go to introducing our board. I'm Lisa Hart. I'm the executive director of the Alliance, and let's see. Let's go to Charles.
Hey everyone, Charles Miller. I am on the board. I am also the liaison to the Trees Committee. I am also the chair of the Palms Neighborhood Council Green Committee, as well as being the chair of Los Angeles Climate Reality Project and a CFAC commissioner.
And he's just skimming the surface, seriously. He's a busy guy.
Should I throw it or you want to do it?
Sorry?
Should I throw it or you want to?
Well, I guess we're spending too much time talking about that, so I will give it to Aurora.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Aurora Corona. I'm a board member of the Los Angeles Neighborhood Council Sustainability Alliance. And I have no other titles, unlike Charles, other than Friends of the Pico Union Library.
The only reason I said them all is because last time Kathy got upset with me for not listing all of them, but okay. Sorry.
Well, I can list some more, but I just wanted to keep.
All right.
But thank you, everyone, for being here. I really want to hear about public banking.
And Muriel.
Hello, I'm also part of the Sustainability Board. And I'm also the chair of the Transportation and Land Use Committee with a new co-chair, so I will bring that up later in the meeting. And I was formerly part of the Echo Park Neighborhood Council. And yeah, I will pass it along to Alex.
And I forgot about our new committee name, so thank you, Muriel, for reminding me. Yes, Alex, if you're able. Alex is driving, I just learned, so.
Oops.
Go
Hi,
ahead,
sorry.
Alex.
Hi, everyone. I'm Alex Tangelos, and I am also on the board of the LANCSA with all of these lovely people.
All right, thank you. And Jerry, are you here? Okay, I think Jerry is not with us. He chairs our Youth Environmental Action Committee. Okay, so let's dive into the conversation about the public bank. I don't know how many of you folks are aware of it, but you know what would be fun to start off with is if people can put into the chat their thoughts or associations about the public bank. So just dive in and put in your thoughts about when you think of public bank, what you think of. And maybe some board members can help us and read off some of the things that people are putting in there, because that might be fun for us to get a feel. And also give us a feel for what you know. Because I don't really know how much people know or don't in this group. But I can tell you that the Alliance officially took a position supporting the public bank in 2021, which was a bit ago. But as few folks have been involved with city policy, you know that the city moves incredibly slowly on issues. So it's been a bit, and it's been a very slow road, but there's been a lot of momentum lately, which is super exciting. So we're going to hear about that tonight. Oh, and I just realized that Aurora and we have, okay, Pete, you guys are moving folks from the waiting room, but I
Yeah.
should disable the waiting room. I don't know if you guys can do that or if I need to.
I was
Um,
able to, Lisa, just FYI.
You're not able to. Okay, so I have
We
to
are
do.
able to. We
Oh,
are
if you
able
can
to.
disable it, then please
Yes.
just disable it. That would be great. Uh, So we're going to talk with Dan Pelegero, if I said that right. And if I didn't, Dan can tell me. Oh, he's laughing. So that tells me that I did not. But he can correct us. He's the finance director for Public Bank LA. And also Trinity Tran is here, and she's the executive director of Public Bank LA. So I want to give her a shout out because she's done a tremendous job leading this effort. And so Dan and I are going to have a conversation about just giving us a background about the public bank effort, and also specifically about what it can do for sustainability, and like why would a sustainability alliance get behind public banking, right? Like why do we care about public banks? So we're going to talk about that, about, you know, what is a public bank, why we in a sustainability alliance care about public banking, and what we can do to get one here in LA. And then after he and I have talked for a little bit, we're going to open it to all of you. And so if you have questions and comments, this is your night to share those and maybe get some answers. So Dan, I'm going to hand it over to you, and please go ahead and introduce yourself more thoroughly than I have, and you can correct my pronunciation of your name, and let's start from there.
Absolutely. So here's the thing with my name, it's Pelegero or Pelegero. I'm actually not quite certain either because I
Oh.
kept getting that as well. I think first off, thank you for having us. And yeah, so every pronunciation I think is appropriate given what I know about my name. Thank you for having us today. Thank you for letting us chat about public banking. What was your question?
Well, what's the origin of your name?
From Shativa in Spain, so I think it's some up-jump soldier that basically became landed into the aristocracy after one of the times that the town below the castle just didn't fall, and I think that's where like a little bit of generational wealth was built up before the family went to El Salvador.
Oh, fascinating. Okay.
So I think so. The last piece of little housekeeping I kind of want to throw out here is if you're not already on mute right now, please throw yourself on mute. Otherwise, I'm one of those people that doesn't listen well while trying to do the talk piece. So if you have that ability, please do. Otherwise, let me talk a little bit about where public banking came from, at least as far as I'm aware of the story for here in Los Angeles. So back in 2019, back in 2019, 2018, there was there were actions explicitly around how do we divest from big banks in LA that are directly funding the Dakota Access Pipeline. What happened was enough pressure was put on LA City Council that then they reopened the banking contract for what's called a request for proposal, an RFP. What they did from that point was then look at all the other options that were available at the time, and then they selected Bank of America and JP Morgan Chase as the banking partners moving forward. Essentially, moving from Wells Fargo to another two of the big four was different, but same. Now, what that basically meant was, okay, well, what does this mean for taxpayer money that's ultimately being held in a place where we don't really have a place where we don't have a say in how our money's invested once it's deposited it in. The one vote we get with our money is where it's deposited into. And the beautiful thing with any bank and what their business model ultimately is fractional reserve lending. It's the idea of doing for every dollar in deposits the bank takes in, they're able to lend out another 10, roughly.
Wait, can you say that term again? What kind of, say that again?
Fractional reserve lending.
Okay, I'm not familiar with that, so probably other people aren't. Fractional reserve lending.
Yeah. So
Can you break that down a little bit? I'm sorry.
Sure. So the idea is that the bank has to keep a certain amount of money in reserves, which then allows them to then loan out, which is then considered part of their assets, to be able to fund different types of projects where then they're going to collect money on the interest payments. And so most banks using ultimately this term are able to do this at a 10-to-1 ratio, as opposed to a revolving loan fund, which is only really going to be able to do it at a 2-to-3-to-1 or 2 or 3-to-1 ratio. So the lending power is much greater with a bank. So the unallocated budget in Los Angeles is around like $8 billion. Assuming many other things in place, let's say that $8 million was only kept in a checking account. That's $80 billion that could be used for loans by JP Morgan in this case.
Okay, okay. That's a lot for me. Can you break that down a little bit more slowly? Just say that again, please, but like maybe give a concrete example.
Sure. It's the same as like every dollar that you keep in your checking account.
Okay,
The bank is then able to lend out $10 worth of money to other people. And the whole idea is that because the bank should have enough risk requirements in place to prevent essentially a bank run, that we're not all trying to pull our money out at the same
right.
time.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you. Okay,
I see a hand up from Ellen.
yeah, but we're not
Oh.
doing that for quite a while. Sorry, we're gonna
Ah.
just chat the two of us for a bit.
You got it. So
Okay.
the big value piece and where public banking came from for at least Los Angeles was the idea that there was no public alternative to then take that money that was ultimately sitting within a big bank and have and be able to dictate where it's invested beyond the rules and guidelines we have within the different the general fund, the reserve fund, and the extended reserve fund. There is basically what that means is there's quite a bit of money that we spend on debt service each year. I've seen numbers that range anywhere from hundreds of millions to over $1 billion that we're spending in debt service fees each year. And
what exactly are debt service fees?
that's money we pay towards the principal on the loans and the bonds and the performance fees that we're paying to our banking partners, as well as also the interest payments.
Okay. Okay, that's helpful.
And we also don't really have a say in what those banks do with our deposits once we put the deposits in those banks. And so that was ultimately the only power we have right now as a city, is to be able to say, we want to switch, or we want to change our banking relationship. And that's
Right, so they're the ones really in control is what you're saying.
Once it's yes, and there's plenty of good reasons to go with some of the banking partners that we have, given the functionality that they provide for both for municipal as well as like business banking features. But ultimately, we'd have very little say on how that money is invested or recycled back into our own local economy.
And what are the pros? I mean, I will just, a short little anecdote. our organization, you know, we didn't want to, we needed a bank. And we chose not to go with like Wells Fargo, for example. So we're with Beneficial State Bank, which is a, you know, like a good bank. And I have to tell you, candidly, it's been an absolutely miserable experience. So just for this, just to be devil's advocate, what
Mhm.
are the pros of going with one of the big bad banks?
So what the big bad banks ultimately is they're the ones who are spending the most amount of money on their tech, and they also have the power of consolidating a lot of giant accounts in place. So you can argue that the risk would be less.
Okay, so possibly lower risk. Okay,
Mhm.
that's helpful. Okay,
So, but that's the part where then like, but that's in my opinion where I think a lot of benefits end. And that's where I think we, given the crises that we have as both a city and in the state, uh, there are certain economic incentives that just aren't aligned with our current banking relationships.
can you expand on that?
Absolutely. So I'm going to pull up let me pull up kind of a slide here just to
Okay,
kind of make this point.
yeah,
So, what we're looking at here on the left is the amount of money that LA County, the city of LA and LA County are spending on permanent affordable housing each year. It's about for the 25-26 estimate, if memory serves, or it's about $3.4 billion a year. And when we abstract that to how many the cost of a per permanent supportive housing unit, which Prop HHH dashboard last check was about $617,000 per unit, and that we needed about 456,000 units by 2029, according to the Regional Housing Needs Assessment. That puts the bill at about 282 billion dollars. So that $3.4 billion a year is such a microscopic drop in the bucket comparatively. And there's certain tools that we want, like from a housing perspective, we want to be using to uh, bridge this gap a little bit better than what we currently have in place. And the reason I say that too is also because the less housing we have, also the less, this is a city that runs on property taxes, and the less folks we have paying into those property taxes ultimately then affects the revenue draw. And we're seeing that already with ULA, and we're seeing that also with the wildfires. And we want ideally, we want construction back up and running because it's otherwise going to hurt that general fund financial position even more so.
okay, this is really helpful, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Then the other thing I think from and because we're talking sustainability, is also what are we kind of doing to talk about supporting like LA 100, which is the city's, which was a National Renewable Energy Lab, which was how do we generate all of our energy and how do we transition all of our energy investments into carbon-free energy generation? LADW,
Yeah,
LADWP is also reporting to be on target, but one of the places of funding that they were also seeking was the greenhouse gas reduction funds, which of course have been frozen, that were part of the Inflation Reduction Act. And that's all been frozen by the Trump administration.
and I
So,
want to interrupt because I just want everybody to know that this is something, an effort that this alliance has been involved with since probably 2015, 2016. This is one of the first two, if not the first thing we took a position on. So this is really core to our work and core to you know, us, or the frankly the survival of this planet is us electrifying everything. So really critical. And what LA 100 means is us um getting off of fossil fuels, getting our electricity use, getting it off of coal, natural quote gas, etc., and getting it onto like solar, wind, etc. So we want our electricity coming from clean, renewable energy, etc., instead of coal, gas, etc. So thank you. Go ahead.
absolutely. And so to that point, when we then talk about, okay, who's more mission aligned now? Because here's another big thing with a public bank as compared with a private bank. A private bank's going to be responsible to their shareholders. When I look at like Bank of America's like mission statements, it's about responsible growth by any means necessary, but that's about growing their balance sheet. It's not set to how many more units of housing have we built, how many kilowatts or gigawatts of carbon emissions have we reduced every year. And those are pieces that can be written into the bank's charter, whether at a state or at a local level. And that's conversations that can and should be happening. And so the chart that I've got up here is ultimately calls out that one in every, like as of 2023, one in every $3 that is invested in climate finance comes from a public banking source. Now, this can be and so if you were to look at these like burnt orange pieces, those are all different, what would be categorized as public banks. They're either state-owned financial institutions, national depository financial institutions, multilateral ones, bilateral depository financial institutions. This comes from the Climate Policy Initiative, and they do an annual report on the state of climate financing. And so these get into all the different pieces from regenerative agriculture to the different types of utility scale projects that are happening with like transmission lending, and there are some very interesting Sankey diagrams in that report that then talk about where all of this funding both comes from, who it feeds through, and then ultimately where it goes to. And right in the
Oh,
big
wait,
part.
where are these public banks coming from? I didn't even know there were enough public banks for this to be happening.
Oh, there's actually quite a few public banks in the world. It's
I
that in the
see.
United States, we just have the Bank of North Dakota. There's the Bank of American Samoa that's joined relatively recently, but as part of the greater 48.
So this is globally, a lot of climate financing is coming from public banks.
Public banks and national actors. The other part I would also say where that are, when we look at the private financing side, just as a quick call out, like a third of it is from households or individuals that are just doing
Oh,
their part more
wow.
than ever. So these are all, for lack of a better word, it's us that's funding this thing, and commercial financial institutions, which is this tan bar here, and corporations, which are right here, have stepped up a lot more so than they had in the last 3 years, the last 5 years, the last 10 years. But relative to also what the asset class, the asset size is, it's a lot less because public banks also have, I forget exactly what the percentage is, but it's not anywhere close to 75% of the assets of the commercial financial institutions.
So proportionally speaking, they are not investing at the ratio that they should be.
The ratio they could be, the ratio
Could be.
the way ratio we as a sustain folks focused on like climate resiliency projects, green energy transition projects, electrification. It's not the level that this group I would think would want to see.
Right. I'm comfortable using the word should.
So that's kind of those are relatively like I think the two biggest arguments for where the funding can go, and the way in which the funding can go within Los Angeles is explicitly around it's a concept called loan origination, and it's it's how the Bank of North Dakota operates, and it's also explicitly how the regulations within the intention within the state banking law in California exists today, because a public bank isn't meant to take away the business of a credit union or a community bank. Instead, it's ultimately meant to help prop those businesses up, help them provide even more loans, especially serving communities that either aren't getting that traditional like big four banking isn't typically serving, or specifically are able to like meet customers or really us where we are. And that's going to be things like when I say loan origination, the idea is that when a loan is big enough, the bank will typically go, well, we already we laid out 100 loans. Let's say a few 100,000 per loan. We're tapped out on what we could do today. Instead, if we wanted to do more loan activity, we would have to go partner with another bank, and they'll provide us the funds at a specific rate in order for us to then be able to serve more loans. Public bank, and the idea is that it's going to be a wholesale bank. So it's going to provide this loan origination. It's going to provide those loans so that the credit unions, the community banks are going to be able to service their customer bases more, and they're going to be able to do more projects. And the reason why this is so important, especially with housing, is the way that community banks lend out when it comes to construction lending as compared to those big four banks. Because for community banks, they have, I think, like 40% of the assets in the US. I think they have about 40% of the assets that the big four, Citi, JP Morgan, Bank of America, and Wells have, but they spend 70% of their loan portfolio on construction, like on construction lending or on loans in general. And they are going about dollar for dollar with what the big banks are providing on construction lending as well alone. So it's a little bit, the idea is almost if you want to actually build things, you need community banks and the credit unions to do it. They're the
Oh,
ones who are providing
interesting.
it. And that's what we want the public bank to then provide the taxpayer funds to then facilitate that lending to help even to spur even more construction, to spur even more housing.
Okay. And so you touched on a question that's come up frequently. So, a public bank wouldn't be like a consumer bank for individuals, is that correct? But it would be supporting those banks, is that what you're saying?
That's what we're talking about today. There are other initiatives at the state level that I'm also excited about, where there's the concept of, let's say, Cal account, where every Californian would be they would have the right to a checking account that is zero fee, both on the account overdraft and the account minimum. And also ideally on the network fee for just accessing your ATM if you're like, let's say, working in or out of your ATM network. But that gets us into a lot of complexity on that side of the coin. And there's only $1 million pilot that's happening at the state level right now. The way that this bill was drafted, and if Los Angeles was to do a bank, I would think of it more like an infrastructure bank or a wholesale bank that is ultimately providing additional sources of capital to the credit unions and the community banks that are already here in LA.
Okay. And you mentioned North Dakota, which of course, I've been aware of this North Dakota thing. So it's interesting, what I think what's come up a lot, and this is true with the environmental movement overall, actually.
Mhm.
Like how is it that this thing is now framed as sort of a progressive versus conservative argument when it seems like it isn't that way traditionally or hasn't been that way historically? Like, how is it that we got here when it didn't used to be that way? Or if you could speak to that, that would be
I would
helpful.
actually argue it's actually still not that way.
Okay,
What's revealing itself in California. There's a very
okay.
conservative treasurer in Florida right now that's trying to stand up a public bank called the Sunshine Bank, and that would be subject to uh, what is happening with the state governor's office over there, and which
Yeah,
has a
if
mission,
Florida's
which has a
interested
mission
in that, then right,
I don't believe in at all. And some of the largest
right.
public banks in the world are Chinese and Russian. And I don't agree with a lot of the politics or a lot of the funding priorities over there either. Ultimately, what a public bank is, it's a tool and it is subject to the conditions in which that are reflective of the public. And I think that that's what I'm advocating for with a public bank ultimately doesn't mean that we get this thing and it's going to solve all our problems. Far from it.
Oh,
That's
shoot,
step
it's not
one.
going to? Oh,
But
oh, well, okay.
it's a tool set that gives us a better opportunity for control in ways that we don't have today. There's enforceability and accountability measures that we would have with a public bank that we don't enjoy today.
But seriously, I mean, just to push on that a little bit, why do
Mm.
you think it's been framed as this conservative versus progressive thing? And are there okay, and how could we argue against that? So I guess I'm asking both sides of the coin.
No, so I think in California, it has been framed in a very progressive manner. I think you could say the same thing in Rochester. Uh, but in like North Dakota, that's not the case because also in North Dakota, while they like are enjoying an 18% return on investment,
Hmm.
so much of that is fun because their three big business models are resource extraction, which is something here in California we don't really want to play a part of,
Right.
agriculture, which does have a role here, a big role here in California, but it's not the same type of industry relative to the size of the economy in North
Okay.
Dakota. And then there's the small business lending, which I think there is very much a similar play space.
So you're saying it can be used for conservative or progressive values, I think is partly what you're saying.
The part that becomes very important then is what's the mission and
Right.
what's the mandates in it. And if there is a mission for this bank must be playing a role in building more housing, a metric for the bank's success then is tied to how many units actually got funded and built. If there's a mission and a mandate tied to carbon emissions, then it's what type of projects, whether it's a community rooftop solar or a utility scale like hydrogen plant for that was then responsible, that the bank was responsible for funding to then be able to say, here's how many gigawatts of carbon we were then able
Right.
to prevent or we were able to remove.
Right. So if we said we're gonna use it to build up coal plants or something, then maybe we'd get the Republicans on board.
I mean, in California, I'm not quite certain, but I think I would argue it's more about what jobs are we bringing into those districts is going to be usually the bigger argument there.
Right, right. Okay, that's helpful. I want to move on to a little bit more specifics about sustainability. So before we do
Mhm.
that, are there other pieces about public banking in general that you think you should tell us or that we should know about?
Oh, absolutely. So I think
Okay.
there's when we talk about sustainability now, there's a element of this that we haven't looked too deep. We haven't looked as deeply in yet with Los Angeles explicitly, but also there isn't, let's say, like a Los Angeles explicit insurance provider the way there is with the California
Mm.
Fair Plan. Now, with the California Fair Plan, I believe that thing is insolvent by like a couple of $1 billion at the moment, and it's the provider of last resort. And when we look at like the fires that happened in the Palisades and in Altadena, those are folks that were, especially in the Palisades, many of which were covered under the FAIR plan. And so the state and also us, back to that property tax money we need, because we need more housing back up so that way we can collect the lost revenue. There's no bank right now, I think, that's incentivized given how also I think when I looked at the chat earlier, and there were the healthy amount of skepticism, I will be very curious to hear some other perspectives on who else actually is economically incentivized to do this. But with a public bank, those climate resiliency projects, those projects that minimize the impact of these fires, of any naturally occurring devastation, that actually starts creating this feedback loop to things like the FAIR plan, which ultimately right now is we need to figure out a better way for paying for. And also, folks do deserve to have homeowners insurance.
Okay, very interesting. And, so we've talked about, okay, homeowners insurance and housing and energy. Have people talked about other domains of sustainability that, I mean, is the sky the limit? Like, could this be applied to anything? And it's just about what we decide to apply it to, do you think? Or is it more applicable to certain things than others? Like, how do you decide what we could apply this to?
I think for us, I, I'm not as well familiar with LA's charter, so like I'm not going to say the sky is the limit because
Okay.
I think as a municipal entity, this would be subject to that charter. But I think
Well,
as
and the
far,
charter, of course, I mean, we have a charter reform effort now.
yes.
So maybe maybe it's kind of good that we're talking about this as we're talking about charter reform, because maybe this is the opportunity to try to influence it. Although if you folks have been paying attention to the news, you might have heard that the charter reform effort is struggling. So anyway, go ahead.
The way I think about it is LA is currently in an affordability crisis, and we know that we also are trying to drive forward with either electrification or with just different ways of minimizing the amount of energy costs that we're going to be having, both because like we need power in the LA basin, and also we need power even just at places like the port of LA in order to be globally competitive with all the other different potential shipping lanes that could be used. The part that I will say as far as from a sustainability perspective is, again, once again, having read some of the skepticism in the comments just as we started, financial sustainability has to be number one here. Like, that's the table stakes. Like, if this is not actually like a proper safeguard of the city's funds, then this isn't going to work at all. Like, I know, like, I'd love to jump right into the house. How do we solve housing? How are we trying to get more, how are we trying to get solar panels on every roof and a electric heat pump and electric stoves in every home? Those parts are great and parts that my politics personally believe in. But if the dollars and cents if it doesn't make sense from a dollars and cents perspective,
Then it
and
doesn't work.
exactly, and it has to do that first and foremost.
Are you talking to Jack? You trying to win Jack over?
No, I honestly, I think there was like 3 other people in there that was
Okay.
along those lines of this
Not
is
gonna happen. As you know, I wrote the opposition argument to Measure B in 2018.
I've
Okay,
heard tell, but that
but
was before my time.
but wait, so my question is, how do you decide? So you're just saying it's got to pencil out is your answer. Is that what you're saying? Like if it pencils out, then we can look at it. And if it has to conform with the charter, is that your answer?
I think so. And I think
Okay.
within Los Angeles, that's very much the case. At the state level, there's slightly different dynamics, but the principles remain the same.
And you're touching on another question I had. So there's a state level effort, and I think there are also efforts in like Oakland and San Francisco. Is that correct?
Yep, in the East Bay in San Francisco. There's also
Okay.
efforts in Sacramento.
Oh.
Trinity's gonna, if I don't list all of them, I feel like Trinity's gonna come across the Zoom for me though.
Okay. So a lot going on. And to that point, what's happening in LA is very slow. I don't know, are we behind the efforts in those other cities and the state? Like, and how are we doing in LA and what is happening in LA?
So we were first out the gate with getting a motion for and opening the RFP for the feasibility study. Since the
And can you
RFP,
explain that a little bit? I know what you're saying, but I don't know if everybody here does.
no, that's a great call out. So with the ultimately according for AB 857, which is the state bill that allows for the state of California to issue bank charters, the city has to present a business plan, and they have to then vote to then both fund that business plan, and then submit that with the governance documents to the Department of Financial Protection and Inclusion, which is the state regulator here in California. The city voted to create an RFP and select consultants that are experts in the banking industry and in economic development industries to review what LA had in terms of assets, and then propose a plan, take input from the different city departments, take input from groups like this, and then start seeing how does this pencil out, and is that a business plan that the city would be happy with? Now, that got passed, I believe, in 2022, right around when I first joined this group. Now, and since then, it has remained an unfunded priority. Whereas the feasibility study passed in San Francisco, and I know that there's momentum happening over there. And in East Bay, they also had their feasibility study funded as well, and they are also progressing.
Is that because we're a bigger city? Is that like, what is wrong with us? I get so frustrated. I'm sorry, I'm just venting. What is wrong with the city? Like, we just get stuck on I can't tell you. I think most of the issues that we as an alliance have worked on or supported are in situations like this. We are stuck on virtually everything. And that's one of the reasons that we're involved with charter reform, because something is so wrong with how we work as a city.
How do I put it?
Do you have a one sentence answer to this question?
There's a lot of council members.
So the public
Is
bank.
this Trinity? I can't see you.
Yeah.
Is that Trinity talking?
Hi, it's Trinity.
Okay, go ahead.
Public bank motion has been unanimously supported by City Council. It was the funds were supposed to be released last year to hire the city's consultant to write the public bank feasibility study, but those funds got swept by the former council president. So the city has already issued an official RFP. They actually have hired consultants to write the public bank plan. But unfortunately, those funds did get swept. So we're working to get those funds back. And the great part is that we now have 9 council members, including the council president, who are throwing in their own discretionary dollars to get this off the ground. And so this has always been unanimously supported by city council. The law was signed in 2019. The pandemic happened. The regulations weren't even finalized by the state regulators till 2022. So really, it's only been several years, and we're talking about public banking, which is challenging a 400-year-old, very entrenched institution. So for an idea this bold, it's moved quite quickly. And you mentioned other regions. So San Francisco, East Bay, Sacramento. We just did a presentation to Fresno City Council in the Central Valley just last week. So there is interest and momentum happening up and down the state, because at the end of the day, it is a logical step for cities to explore. How do we save money? How do we redirect the billions of dollars that flow out of our communities year after year? How do we redirect that and keep that here locally, create a financial tool at the local level that we can cut borrowing costs, that we can cut a borrower cost, save money, and generate revenue so that we can build affordable housing, build green energy and sustainable projects, build homes and schools, and fix our streets. So given that we are in a moment now in Los Angeles, we just got out of a really tough budget cycle with $1 billion budget deficit, with thousands of jobs on the line to get furloughed. And the future looks quite bleak with the next several years, looking at all of the impacted funding streams happening at the federal level. So our options are, do we continue borrowing and increasing debt year after year, cutting essential services year after year, or raising taxes? Or do we look at how do we create a viable tool at the local level so that we can create a permanent pool of capital and leverage our tax dollars so that it can do more? So this is really a common sense, logical step for LA.
I actually want to piggyback on that a second, because we were at the Budget and Finance Committee meeting last week, and there was we were on the agenda, and the other folks that were on the agenda were folks from the Palisades that were asking for waivers on the fees for the reconstruction permits. And they're saying, hey, this is just like a drop in the bucket. We know compared for all the entire construction costs, but we are hurting, and every dollar is so useful and so helpful. And the city is they're asking good due diligence questions then, because it's ultimately, I think it was 270 million was what they were talking about, the financial impact of lost revenue by waiving those fees from what they were projecting. And the entire time I'm sitting there going, like, if we'd had a public bank, if we had a properly capitalized public bank at this point, what we could be doing, because back to patient capital with property taxes, is you could say we could have been saying, if with this facility, a $0 down payment, start paying the loan back like it's any other loan. And then the fact that we know we're getting the property taxes back, and because the land value will continue to increase with time, we're going to continue to keep seeing revenue on the backside that no private bank is ever going to appreciate in the same way. And those are the types of things that, like a municipality, like a state entity, a county entity, these are all things that they can appreciate and that we can leverage that no private bank can. And it's even down to the idea of the more housing units there are, the more billers there are in LADWP, which then means more revenue coming in that way as well. Because if I was to go talk to like a state agency and they say, okay, like, can you offer us a bank account that beats the 0.01% that we get on interest by keeping funds in the checking account? The answer ultimately, even with like the most conservative estimate on the affordable housing units built from a poorly capitalized public bank, still doubles that.
So you both touched on a really a point that I wanted to raise, which is the city strike. It strikes me, and I am in this way in my own life, so I don't mean to be too critical of the city in some respects, but they strike me as acting very penny wise and pound foolish now, because they can't afford to move forward, but because they can't afford to move forward, they are losing money. And it's this terrible catch-22 that they can't seem to get themselves out of. And so I just love your thoughts on that.
It's very much, I would argue it's very much that. And then because also like, why haven't we moved forward? This is a multi-year journey. And even like think about like the impact of what, let's say, like a public bank with 30 million in the asset, like with 30 million in the initial capitalization, that impact it would have on the city. I showed that chart with that we need 284 billion dollars for on the housing piece. It would add it would add some small relief there, but it's still a small drop in the bucket compared to what it is we actually need. And the reason we're in this place is because we are lacking the infrastructure and we are robbing Peter to pay Paul right now. So we are
Right.
acting from a very like, I don't want to lean too hard. I don't want to call out the abundance word, but it is ultimately we're acting from a place of anxiety. And because it's a multi-year journey, the incentives aren't always necessarily there for how is this going to get me some quick wins in my next term for my next election campaign.
And I want to, I always want to frame this. I'm the eternal optimist. You know, at the end of the day, we realize that all elected officials are risk adverse, right? We're talking about banking, you know, moving them towards the idea has taken a lot of work and movement building from a grassroots, largely unfunded, volunteer-led movement, moving this idea forward. So, you know, we have gained a lot of momentum in just a few short years and now have, you know, as I mentioned, 9 council members who are actually supporting this with their own funds. But that's why it's so important for us to take this next step and move forward with the feasibility studies, because it's going to lay out how this is going to be economically viable for the city of LA. So it's going to lay out the capitalization strategies. How do we get this off the ground? Where's the startup capital coming? What the financial models look like, the business models, the investment and lending priorities, the governance structure. So all of the details about how this bank can work for Los Angeles, how we can save money and generate revenue to fund the things we need. This is why this is so important for the city to move forward. And we are hopeful that we're going to be able to get the rest of the funding we're hoping within the next several months. I mean, we're talking about, it's such a minimal amount of money. It's been called budget dust for those who are on the call or aren't aware. So the phase 1 of the feasibility study that lays out everything I just mentioned is $460,000. We've managed to raise over $100,000 with 9 offices. There's only a $300,000 to go. I mean, when you're talking about a city with a $13 billion budget, $300,000 to put together a roadmap of how to save money and generate revenue is really just common sense. So I cannot wait to put my money in a public bank. So this is a public bank is a wholesale bank. So it's a banker's bank. So it's not a retail facing bank, but it will partner with community banks, credit unions, and CDFIs on the ground that will, you know, support consumer facing products. But this is
Right.
the bank for the city. You can kind of essentially see it as a back office that to help lower costs for the city.
The part that's also I think is really important is because it's also we're still so early right now, is that the more engaged groups are like yours, then the more that's going to have influence then on what the mission of this bank is, what the mandates are, and that's going to dictate what the lending priorities and the programs will be.
Yeah, so this is good segue. So a couple questions and then we're going to open it up. I think we're like within a couple minutes of opening it up to all I can tell there's a lot of, we have a really engaged group who are going to have a lot of comments and questions, I think. So where is a Budget and Finance Committee Chair, Katie Yaroslavsky? I heard she gave such a great speech the other day when she was again saying she was not keen on expanding the LA Convention Center. And she mentioned the public bank. And I know she said that she would love to be funding the the public bank with her own discretionary funds if she had the funding. I thought, well, of course she could, but whatever. I thought that was a little bit of a cop out personally, but I thought that was good that she said that. So I'm wondering where, I guess she's sort of, sounds like where is she exactly on this? Or
So
is she?
Oh, sorry. So where we are now with the budget and finances, we passed unanimous vote to move forward with finding the rest of the funding. So in the budget and finance committee hearing last week, Chair Yaroslavsky added an amendment to instruct the CAO to put together a list of all the unfunded priorities in the next FSR, in the next financial status report. So now the motion is going to go to full council for a vote. So what we're most likely looking at is a combination of funding from discretionary fundings from council offices, from philanthropy. That was another thing that Yaroslavsky brought up is
Okay.
philanthropy help to offset the cost of this? I mean, we're talking about such a small amount of money that we feel confident between the city general fund and the discretionary funds and philanthropy, we can get this thing off the ground.
To also answer your question, maybe directly in a different way also, is in that speech where she was castigating the funding of the convention center and what that would mean for the general fund. She also talked about the New York City Economic Development Council as a potential path as like a corrective action. And this gets us back into what does the infrastructure look like? Because the New York City Economic Development Council ultimately is in many ways, it's a public financing institution. It's a municipal finance corporation. It's it's issuing bonds. It's running, I think, about 6 different revolving loan funds for different priorities, and that whether that's putting like wind farms out in not necessarily the Hudson, but basically changing the renewable energy piece to also different housing and small business lending pieces, which some of which are in a wholesale manner, some of it's direct lending to folks that are actually operating or running their projects. So it's at this point, the part that she also had called out in that speech is there's billions of real estate asset that LA is using that isn't using at all. We're not leveraging it in any way. And so like a public bank can work very well hand in hand with whatever like asset manager comes out of the city, and whether that ends up being HACLA or a new entity entirely, we still need a financing arm. We still are going to want somewhere that's going to then be able to route those funds and is actually locked into those conversations. Because the way things are right now, it all just lives in the CAO's office or the Office of Finance, depending on what the project is. And finding who is responsible for what takes time, even for us.
And
So-
if I can add, Lisa, just to jump off of what Dan was saying about the Municipal Finance Corporation, because interestingly, that is a strategy that San Francisco is taking. So before they're creating a public bank, but they're doing a phased approach. So they're creating something called a Municipal Finance Corporation. It's a weird, wonky policy term, but it's essentially, it's a revolving loan fund. The city creates a permanent pool of capital. It can lend from that, and then loans are repaid back into that fund, so that funds stay in the cities. Because right now, when the city, one of its department, when it spends money, that money leaves the city essentially and doesn't return. So this creates a permanent pool of capital in the city. So what San Francisco is doing, they're creating an MFC Green Bank. So that green bank, the city will be able to lend from return, and loans get repaid back into that green bank. And the idea is to scale up over the course of a few years. Once they create buy-in on an MFC revolving loan fund, they show a track record for responsibly lending public funds. The idea is to then scale up to a full-scale public bank within a few years, where you can activate that 10 times leverage power. So Dan mentioned that
Yes.
fractional reserve lending, which no one understands, but because it's a weird, no one understands finance because it's intentionally created to be complicated. But the only thing you should what's important about the fractional reserve lending is times 10, essentially, up to times 10. So $1 equals $10 in lending. $1 million can yield up to $10 million in lending, but you're lending to build homes and to build schools rather than Wall Street lending to build fossil fuel projects and military industrial complex projects. So that's the leverage power that we would create once we are able to activate a full-scale public bank.
And is this something that charter reform, the charter would need to be modified to do a lot of this? Is that true? Or not?
No, it doesn't. We don't need a charter reform. So we needed one in 2018, a ballot measure, because the city of LA's charter restricts it from getting involved in commercial and commercial services. So per the California Public Banking Act, public banks were defined as nonprofits. So this is a nonprofit corporation. Its the mission and mandates is to save money, to support economic development and affordable housing. Those are not for-profit industries. So we do not, because Governor Newsom and the state legislature created the law, the California Public Banking Act, that nullifies the need for a charter amendment in Los Angeles.
Okay, very interesting. Okay, I think my last question is, because I really do realize we need to open it up. How can we help? How can people on this call help?
Fantastic. That's already, I think the link has been shared. Ultimately, what's happened in the past, there was a council file a lot of members of this group, a lot of neighborhood councils had submitted for. Somewhere in the mix, this year, a new council file was opened. And so what we would like to ask is for you to submit a new community impact statement for the new file, which is specifically for finding the funding for the feasibility study. On the right here, I have listed out what phase one for the feasibility study would cost the city and how much we've already been able to fundraise from the different council members who have already committed their parts of their discretionary funds to the effort, and how much the running total left to fund is.
Okay, thank you. So yeah, and for those of you who have been around long enough, you've seen, and I never understand why city clerk does this. I mean, I should, but I don't. But city clerk sometimes, and sometimes for reasons that seem clear to people, and sometimes for reasons that don't, they will change the council file, and it's really hard on, especially on neighborhood councils, I think. When so many of you, I mean, God, I don't even know, but there are tens, I mean, I don't know, maybe 30 or 40 CISs in the old council file from 2019. And now we're asking all of you neighborhood councils to, you can even take the same old CIS. And maybe you don't even have to run it through your, maybe it's just a job for a secretary. Maybe you don't even need a new vote or anything. But so maybe it's just an administrative task to take that CIS and put it in the new council file, which would be very helpful, because really this is, I mean, it's not a new position, but it would be very helpful for all of those to show up in the new council file. Because it's a lot of work that a lot of people did, a lot of neighborhood councils, but we are not done, folks. So that would be helpful. Okay, should we open it up? Because I'm sure we've got a lot of very patient people and we'd love to hear from them. All right, and we've got, so you guys can raise your virtual hands. And before you speak, please introduce yourself. And if somebody could stop spotlighting me, I'd really appreciate it. Thank you. Okay, Miran.
Actually, Glenn is before me.
Well, somehow you got before him. I don't know how that happened. I don't understand, but it happened. So you get to go first.
Okay, Miran Kalajan, Winnetka Neighborhood Council, Lake Balboa, Northwich South, and Westlake. My question is, how will the city ensure that the California Public Bank LA truly serves public interests, not just city projects, and delivers measurable benefits for residents and the small businesses?
That's a great question. And ultimately, this is why we also want you involved and why we want you continuously participating. Because as we're going through that feasibility study and we're determining what are those non-financial metrics and what are the places that are going to move the needle for the small business lending portfolio, that's very much where this is the window once that feasibility study opens and once we start getting the input in for you to put your finger on the scale in that way. Because it could be a case of how many, like the metrics could be how many businesses were open or how many businesses were converted to, if folks are on the more progressive side, focused on co-ops from folks that are retiring from the, that are coming into this new retirement class. So it's what those non financial KPIs are today? I don't know. Key performance indicators, apologies. I come from the payments world predominantly. But as far as what having your say and what the governance looks like, that is very much up for conversation right now and why we want you involved.
And can I give you a follow-up question? Very short follow-up.
Yes,
What
that's fine.
what safeguards will be in place to maintain transparency, public accountability, and independence from political influence in the bank's decision making?
That is also a great question. So there's a handful of different governance models that have been proposed, both I think like across the spectrum from folks that are I think sitting within California that are sitting more on the moderate side, all the way through to the full progressive side with worker assemblies and the changing board seats on a much more regular basis. The pure answer is I don't know the answer to that question. That's part of this is all going to be part of finding this out, both with the feasibility study and then also with the governance that occurs after that.
And can I add to that? Sorry, I'm jumping in on that transparency question because it's very important. It gets raised, and I don't know if this was made clear in the presentation that this bank is not run by city council. It is a separate nonprofit entity, financial entity with its own board of directors. And it's the day-to-day operations of a public bank are run by financial experts, by public bankers that will have a mission and mandate that will they're tasked with running the bank per the mission and mandates of the bank. So a public bank is going to have 4 levels of oversight. It will have the local government that owns a bank, the state regulators, the Department of Financial Protection Innovation Agency, the federal regulators, the FDIC, as well as the general public. So that's 4 levels of oversight for the public bank. The governance structure, the way we created the law at the state. So the California Public Banking Act created the legal framework for cities to be able to go through a series of steps to be able to receive a public bank license or charter. So we didn't define details of a bank at the state level, knowing that a bank in a progressive city like San Francisco is going to look different than a bank in the Central Valley. So the governance structure, the lending priorities of public banks are going to be designed by each locality. So an LA bank is going to look different than a Central Valley bank potentially. And so it really is up to the local constituencies working with stakeholders and the local government to design a governance structure that is going to be democratic, that is going to be representative of the people, especially marginalized voices, especially small businesses, affordable housing, green energy, but it also has to be realistic enough to be able to be approved by both state and federal regulators. And also, I want to add that because this is a public bank, it's subject to the Brown Act and the Public Records Act, which is unlike current banks. So right now, our public funds are sitting in private banks. How those funds are used, those decisions are made behind closed boardroom doors, and you and I don't have any say in how those funds are leveraged. So a public bank brings—
Or how the risks are managed.
Yes, exactly. So a public bank brings transparency and accountability to the use of public funds. But like with everything, it comes down to how engaged local constituents are, whether it's public banking or whether it's a green energy initiative or housing, and any initiative is going to ultimately depend on how engaged citizens are.
Another good way of putting it too, as far as transparency, is this bank's going to be subject to the Public Records Act. Private banks are not.
The Brown Act and Public Records Act.
Super interesting. Thank you. That's super helpful. Glenn.
So I'm gonna say something, but it's a question.
And Glenn, can you please introduce yourself?
Yes, Glenn Bailey, Neighborhood Council Budget Advocates, Valley Alliance of Neighborhood Councils, LA Neighborhood Council Coalition. So while I'm sympathetic to Lisa's complaint, because I share it, regarding the city clerk and new council files, in this case, the new council file number was made because on May 22nd, when the City Council Budget and Finance Committee was going through the budget, there were a whole series of motions made on a variety of subjects. This was one of the subjects. So the 250600 is the city budget council file, and this was a series of almost 100 motions that were made. And so it's not the city clerk's fault that the city that a motion was introduced during the sorry, not the committee. I think that was the city council deliberation. On the
Wait,
budget.
sorry, Glenn, can you, just for my own edification, because I really do struggle with this stuff, can you explain that a smidgen more thoroughly, please?
Okay, so when a department issues a report to the city council or gets referred to city council, it's assigned a council file number. When a city council member makes a motion, it's assigned a city council number. So when the city council was deliberating on the city budget on May 22nd, the full city council, there was a whole series of various motions made on a variety of subjects related to the city budget discussion. In fact, that was the only thing on the agenda, I believe, for that day. And so the motion made regarding the public bank made during the discussion or consideration of the city budget was automatically assigned the 250600 because it was during the budget process. So I just wanted to, it wasn't the city clerk's fault.
Okay, so,
Because it was done during the city's budget consideration. But also
Okay.
know that it was, as I put into chat, it's very specific, the wording there, instructing the CAO, assistant to CLA, identify funding for the public bank study, use of discretionary funds. So that's what they're doing. But it's not the overall motion of, hey, let's have a public bank or not. So, but it is the most recent one because, yes, they had to fund they had to come up with money to fund the study. So, so that there may not be a question mark after. I did want folks to understand how it is that this happened. It's not the city clerk just unilaterally decide to wake up in the morning and change the council file number, okay? But
let me just
hold on just a
around.
minute. Let me just wrap up, okay? And then you can say what you want. What I want to get clarification on is that the original motion on the original council file that put into motion the public bank. If you can give any clarification on it still being valid and alive, separate from this funding of the study. So that's my question to our resident visiting experts.
The original motion expired, so now we have two new motions. One is a budget motion, which came out of the mayor's budget, and then the second council file is related to the discretionary funds.
Okay, so I put this S16 in the chat. What's the other motion number?
Let me drop both then. Let me dig it up.
All right, I'm done. Thank you.
Okay, Stephanie.
Hi. Yeah, I had a
Stephanie, can you introduce yourself, please?
I just saw this online and I've been very intrigued by the public bank. I think it's very much needed in LA, and I'm part of an environmental justice ministry as well as our revolution for Feel the Burn San Fernando Valley. So involved in local politics. I had a question regarding, so right now, City Council gives money to local candidates. I think it's like matching dollars for running an election. I'm not sure exactly where that money is coming from, but we all know that elections are way too expensive, and money is actually, I think money is not necessarily solving our problems. So like, is there any way or any thought about, creating publicly funded elections so that we don't spend this ridiculous amount of money or on elections locally?
Well, I mean, if given a choice between privately funded elections and publicly funded elections, that's where my personal politics sit. where that fits in within a public bank, I don't think we've ever tied those two ideas together.
Yeah, I don't see the connection, but if you're not aware, are you aware of democracy vouchers, Stephanie?
Yeah, that's where I believe that's what the city valet is coming from. So my question is, where is that money coming from? Is it from like big banks, or we don't know? Or
I actually don't know if it comes from the general fund or from the allocated budget.
Yeah, I don't either.
It's a good question, but because with LA, there's what is it about? There's 8 billion that's unallocated, and that's the stuff that everyone has the budget fights over, and that's like I think over 50, or there's over 50% alone goes to LAPD and LAFD, and then the rest of it is to all the other services. And then the allocated budget, if memory serves, is about 14 billion right now, and I'm happy to be corrected on that number. And that's stuff where a specific tax is raised for a specific purpose and must go to that direction. And I don't know if where the democracy vouchers sit within those two. And I would be, my assumption is it's already, there's a specific tax that's funding those.
okay.
Well, we don't have the democracy vouchers, so nobody's funding them because they are also stuck. Anyway, okay. Sorry that we can't be more helpful, Stephanie.
That's okay.
Connie.
Yes, I'm Connie Acosta, a board member and treasurer of the Echo Park Neighborhood Council, and I'm also a budget advocate. I just have a question or point of clarification. The city has a council file presently, right? That's asking for the city to do an independent feasibility study relative to the city bank. Is that correct? But you keep mentioning two. So is there one or two motions?
Connie, this initiative is just one municipal public bank where I put in the chat two council files because as it was mentioned previously, there was an old council file that expired. The city then introduced an amendment in the budget, in the mayor's budget. So that is the 616. And then council members Gerardo and Hugo Martinez introduced another motion. And that specifically was to start the process for them to move their discretionary dollars to help offset the cost of the public bank feasibility study.
Okay, and which one do we write a CIS for?
Ideally, if you can.
For both?
If you haven't written for the first one, for the first one, then please do that. But if you already have, then just S16.
So wait, I might be missing one. So there are two new ones?
There's two. I'm sorry that it's very confusing, but yeah.
I've only been promoting one new one. So I think I am missing one.
Okay. Yeah, I dropped both council files in the chat, so you can take a look at whichever one you don't have.
Okay.
If I can
Well,
just
Silver
clarify,
Lake will be getting you one new one, but not two new ones. I hate to tell you.
just to clarify, the original council file is the 1912-35. That's the one that expired. So when they put a new motion in, they got a sub file supplemental motion, which is the S1. That gave new life. Basically, it's a new motion and it starts the clock all over again. So even though the 1912-35 is the same, you have to use the S1 for the new version.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, I fear I might have been misinforming people. Okay, I will go and try to clean that up. Okay, we have, do we not have any more? Go ahead, Trinity.
S1 is the priority one.
Say that again?
The S1 19-1235 S1, so that we're all clear, is the priority. That's the main one. That's the one that's going to move to full council. The other one is the discretionary fund.
Can you put that in the chat, please? So I'll read it later. Okay.
Thanks, Trinity.
Sorry?
I was just thanking Trinity.
Okay. Any more comments or questions? Okay. Well, thank you. This was really helpful for me and such inspiring work. I mean, I've learned so much through this since, I guess, 2019 or thereabouts when I first learned about this. I mean, I'd really never thought about it. It's kind of like, if you're a fish and you've been swimming in water all your life and you just don't know anything different, like I never thought about a public bank or how it could be different. Although, I was aware of credit unions. I didn't really think, and of course I was aware of the divestment movement and the challenges with our banking system. I didn't know about this, and it's so exciting to think that there could be a different way that our money is used and that our money is used for us the way we want it to be used. And so I think this is incredibly exciting and so important for us. And I really want this to work, and I hope we can make it work. Especially when our city we've had so much financial trouble on and off for so long. So we really need to address that. And Councilmember Katie Yaroslavsky has been talking about, I think she has some very strong, powerful ideas about how we can avoid these budgetary crises. And I really hope that this is part of her portfolio of ideas about ways we can reform our budget system.
Thank you, Lisa. If I can add, because I just want to say a shout out to Ellen Brown. If you all are interested in about learning more about public banking, we've got the godmother of public banking. I think I just saw her and she logged off here, but there you are.
Oh, she's right there.
So Ellen has written the books, all the books on public banking. So if you're interested in reading more and learning more about public banking, definitely would recommend Web of Debt. And check out her wealth of knowledge. Thanks for joining, Ellen.
Thanks, Trinity. You're a way better speaker than I am. I'm a writer. But the one thing I was going to comment on was how the reserve.
Ellen, I'm having trouble hearing you. My computer's a little weird, but.
Sorry, I was on the wrong speaker.
Oh, much better. Thank you.
Okay. So I was going to explain how the reserve system works. The fact why it is that banks can create more money than they actually have in the way.
Yes, that would be great.
Okay, so the way banks don't actually lend their deposits. What they lend is they create the money they lend. They lend deposits, but they create those deposits let's see, they do it by double entry bookkeeping. So on one side of the books, they have your promise to repay, like your mortgage. And then on the other side, they put the loan amount. And then, so they're actually creating the money that we lend. And banks create 95% of the money supply, roughly, more or less, in the US. And the reserve requirement, the reserves are the thing that you need to get money from one bank to another. So reserves come in with deposits, but a public bank, assuming that you can get the city or the state to put all their money in the bank, has a huge deposit base. So it doesn't have to worry about reserves. It's got plenty of reserves that come in. And most people leave their money in the bank. And certainly, with a public bank, you've only got that one depositor, if it's Bank of North Dakota model anyway. And so they're not going to run on themselves. So it used to be 10% was the reserve requirement just to prevent runs. Like the Silicon Valley Bank run, actually 85% of the depositors tried to pull their money out. So 10% was not enough in that case, but their depositors were not the city. So in this case, the city owns the bank. they're not going to run on themselves. So they're not going to suddenly pull all their money out and need reserves that you have. So you only need a few reserves. I'm not making it clear. I'm sure I can write it much
Is
better.
this, oh, it just occurred to me, is it sort of like being self-insured?
I
No?
would, no.
Okay, I tried.
But anyway, so they're not really lending their deposits, and that's why the reason they can lend many more times than what they have in deposit is because the reserves aren't used very much. I mean, people don't pull their money out of the bank very much, or say the Bank of America has a lot of their trades are between customers in their own Bank of America system, so they don't need to go through the Fed reserve account. It's only when you're either pulling your money out of the bank, in which case you probably want dollars and cents, which are obviously created by the Federal Reserve, and they are physical reserves. Or most reserves are digital, and they're in the reserve accounts of the banks, and they're stored at the Fed. And so what the Fed does when you transfer your money, like you write a check or you use your credit card, money is transferred from your bank to the bank of the recipient. So it goes through this reserve account, but not everything goes through the reserve account. Most deposits just sit in the bank, so they don't need the reserves. So that you only need the reserves, you only need the deposits, the incoming deposits for the reserves that come in with them. And right now, in worst possible case, the bank can borrow from the Federal Reserve. So that's why they put their reserve. It used to be a 10% reserve requirement, and now it's 0. They don't even require reserves in banks, so that you don't even really need the depositors, the incoming deposits. You can borrow from the Fed if you need it, but then it's pretty expensive to borrow from the Fed too. The cheapest way to get your reserves is from your incoming deposits, because most banks don't pay much on reserves. I mean, my bank doesn't pay anything, I don't think. I'm sure I didn't make that any clearer, but anyway.
No, but you kind of bring up this big piece that credit unions, community banks, their biggest focus right now is on getting more depositors. And the biggest deposit base is, let's say, that any one of them could be getting access to facilitate more loan activity is, let's say, 10, 20, 30% of a city like Los Angeles's budget.
Yeah. Well, one objection to a public bank, and I mean, when we've had state bank motions, was that we already put our money in all these local state banks, which is true. They do. They have a lot of deposits in, but so we don't need 100% of their revenues. We'd settle for whatever is left over. I mean, we'll settle for what's going to Bank of America, or sorry, where did you say it's going now?
It's JP Morgan predominantly. It's the primary checking account.
Yeah. So just the checking account money is all we actually would be looking for.
Well, that's actually the part that gets and this gets very LA specific now, because we've got the budget deficit. And the money that's being kept in the checking account is predominantly being used for making payroll, for typical operation spending. The part that I'd be more interested in is the stuff that's sitting in the extended reserve fund, the stuff that has like 7 years of average maturity that performs okay relative to the benchmark, but is really just invested mostly in US Treasuries. And that's the stuff that really is a statement of the long-term investment in our city. And of course, the reason it has to pencil out is because it's so long-term investment. It's supposed to stay stable, because this is also what's ultimately going to be backstopping a lot of the pension funds. So like, it's mission critical. It stays financially sustainable.
Yeah, so I mean, on that, if you click on the resource link, we added a line about the reserve funds, the reserve funds and the treasury bills in that the budget and finance brief, and that's a really important line that Dan raised. 75% of our treasury bills are parked in very low yield earning accounts, earning about 2% or so. So it's barely, so these are funds that's billions of dollars just sitting there, barely putting our dollars to work. So imagine if we just took a small, tiny percentage of that and we were able to leverage that. $1 million equals 10 millions, 10 millions equals $100 million in lending to support Los Angeles needs. And then repayment of the loan comes back to our city. And then we create this self-reinforcing cycle of investment. But I want to add onto another point that Ellen raised about the Silicon Valley crash, because we're most likely headed into another economic crash probably within the next year. I mean, that's been predicted by many economists. And when you looked at the Silicon Valley crash and the Signature Bank, at the end of the day, every time big banks fail, private banks fail, who steps in? It's always the government that steps in to bail them out and to backstop them. Every single time private commercial banking institution fails, it is always the public and the government that steps in. So then the logical conclusion from that is, then why not create public banks from the start that are accountable to the people, that are transparent? So just wanted to put that thought in your head as we're facing a pretty tough economic forecast over the next several years.
And you just told us you're an optimist.
I mean, that's why we're building public banks. I mean, we're taking on one of the most powerful industries on the planet, largely as a grassroots movement that have now established several laws in California. We're the only state in the nation that have established legal framework for cities to be able to form their banks. And so we're entirely optimistic, knowing that we are this is a David and Goliath fight, but we have momentum on our side, we have the energy on our side, we have common sense and logic on our side, and so we're encouraged. Now that we have 9 council members, including the council president and Blumenfield, it's not just progressives on council backing this. This is progressives and mods. It's everyone joining in. We have the majority on city council. This is the very complex city council, unlike San Francisco and East Bay, which are the most progressive areas in the United States. Things tend to move a lot faster there. At Los Angeles City Council, I don't have to tell many of people in this room, is very complex. But to have a majority, including the council president and the pro tem on this, we're encouraged, that we're optimistic that we can get this done, hopefully in the next several months.
Well, thank you. And on that note, I'm going to move us on to our committee reports. Thank you so much, Dan and Trinity and Ellen. Thank you so much for joining us. This was really inspiring and educational. And thank you so much for your time and sharing your expertise with us for such a complex issue. It's so inspiring. So thank you very much.
Thank you for the space and solidarity. Take care. Have a good night, everyone.
All right.
Thank you for making the time.
Okay, so for those who are going to stay with us as we talk about our committees, this should be, I hope, inspiring and educational as well. Let me see if I can pull up. Okay, this should not be too hard. Charles, I want to first talk about our Lawn to Habitat program. So I hope you can, I didn't tell you I was going to do this, but I hope you can talk about this.
Yeah, well, there's one thing that you can always bet on, is that I won't shut up if given the
Yes,
opportunity.
I didn't think you'd be disappointed.
Right. So we do this cool thing, everybody, called Lawn to Habitat. We've done it twice now, and we have a third one we're going to do this upcoming year, where we pull in together a large coalition of other organizations, volunteers from all over sustainability environmental groups. And we have a high school raising plants for us. We have different organizations coming in and providing all different sources of contribution to this event. And what we do is we take a multifamily residential home somewhere in the city of Los Angeles, and it's a place that has been selected because it has lawn and or exotic, usually tropical type plants, the kind of landscaping that's traditionally been used in the 20th century and is not sustainable. And using the volunteer efforts and contributions of all that coalition, plus the rebate funds that are provided by the Los Angeles Department of Water and Power, we convert that 100% to a native habitat lawn or yard. And we've had 2 very successful incarnations of this. And we are in the process of taking applications for a 3rd. So if you're interested, you can go to the ncsa.la website, and it's easy to find there, and apply for this. The requirements are that you're in the city of Los Angeles and that it is a multifamily residential home. And then there are some other requirements in terms of the application that are specifics, but you can read all about that there. And if you have any questions, you can always get in touch with Lisa, or you can get in touch with me directly through the website, or if you have my email address.
And I hope you can, maybe Charles or somebody can put the link in the chat. I did put it in our notes. Okay, thank you. Advocacy, things we're working on right now are artificial turf. This is ramping up. Gosh, I think in the last little bit, we've been in the LA Times. We were on LAist with Larry Mantle. We're making progress on maybe getting native plants highlighted while the Olympics are here. We talked about the public bank tonight. That's the council file I was aware of. Charter reform has just been in the news recently as well, not in a good way really, because the Charter Reform Commission is struggling. We've been talking about gray water systems with LA San, having some interesting conversations, which will be continuing, I think. You folks might be aware of a new motion regarding maximum temperatures for rentals, and we're going to be talking with CD1 about that. I think not this week because I am having a little mini family emergency, but probably next week. And those are the big things we're working on. Our next meeting is November 2nd. Everybody's welcome to join us. And if you want to be leading our advocacy committee, let me know, because I need help. Okay, energy. AJ.
Thanks, Lisa. So just a couple of things we're working on. We don't have a lot of major updates within this committee, but we're still continuing our efforts around the Vista Hermosa community. So just for brief background for those unfamiliar with it, and those who are familiar, these are our ongoing efforts to advocate for best practices within the city for developments that take place on uncapped orphan or idle oil wells. So the latest is we're still following Council File 25736. We've been meeting with one of our partners, Sunrise. So the latest is that there's an in-depth policy which is actually under Council File 21-1395. So it's just showing the in-depth and recommendations of best practices. There's even a task force for many different stakeholders within the city. So the latest that we're waiting on right now is a report back, which we should be expecting before the end of the year. Probably the second thing that we're continuing our efforts working on is the motion of the relative ordinance appeal around 187714. So that's the one that's tied to the case of the California Restaurant Association versus the city of Berkeley, where it was basically where Berkeley was pushing to get new buildings off gas. So latest on this one is we're sort of in a transition period because we've been working with Jackson Hughes out of Tracy Parks District, but now he's going to be leaving, so we're in the transition period of of getting, you know, hopefully finding out who's going to be replacing him so then we can get that person up to speed and then continue our ongoing efforts. And then the last thing is our energy committee's continuing to look for a chair. So one thing I suggest, if anyone in here is interested, maybe to show up to our meeting October 15th. It's usually the third Wednesday at 7 p.m. See what it's like, and then feel free to send me an email to send me and Lisa, and as well as the energy committee email if you're interested, and we'll definitely touch base. And thank you, Lisa.
And just in case people are wondering who's leaving, nobody's leaving, to my knowledge, Tracy Park's office. It's Nithya Raman's office.
Thanks, Lisa.
You're welcome. Okay, transportation and land use.
Hello. Hold on. Oh goodness. I don't know why. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Okay, for some odd reason my video is not working. Okay, so we had, I mean, because we didn't, because of Congress of Neighborhoods, we didn't have a monthly meeting, but we did. Hello? Sorry. So we did have a meeting on September 4th. We're still going over our committee mission statement and the charter draft. AJ spoke about the RE Plus convention he had gone to. There was like a brief discussion about Stop the Gondola. And then most recently we changed our meeting time. So it's going to be the second Tuesdays of the month. That's why I put it in bold. Our next meeting is this Tuesday at 7 p.m. And you'll be meeting my new co-chair, Chase Puskar from the Los Feliz Neighborhood Council. And that's it.
All right, thank you. Trees.
Hey, everybody. Joanne D'Antonio is unable to be here this evening, so I'm filling in on this report. Just some brief highlights. We are going to be meeting in November. The date has not been determined. Our normal meeting time is going to conflict with another event that you'll be hearing about shortly. And several things we want to update you on. I'm going to be dumping in the chat kind of the information that Joanne wanted me to make sure all of you had. But very briefly, the parks needs assessment, now it's all there. The park needs assessment draft came out, and as AJ, your mic was live.
Let me, AJ, I gotta mute you.
There we go. I took care of it.
Sorry, is he muted? I don't.
Yep.
Okay,
Yep. We're
yeah.
good. Okay. So
Sorry, oops.
Yep. You went forward. So anyway, if you want to see the parks need assessment, which discusses a lot of trees and a lot of landscaping throughout the park system, there's a link now in the chat. Also, we've been working very diligently on the Zone 0 proposals from the State Board of Forestry. We had a really good thing that happened last week, and that the City Council voted to support the Community Forest Advisory Committee letter on the subject, which also involved several people from LANCSA Trees. And there are 2 more meetings for that Zone 0. And I'm not going to go into detail as to what that is, because I think we've already talked about it in these meetings quite a few times. But very, very briefly, it's just basically a discussion on maintaining the ability to have hydrated vegetation near trees or near structures in very high fire severity zones. And there's a lot of good science to support the position that we have taken. So that's pretty much it. More of the details are in the chat, but please email trees@ncsla, ncsa.la, if you would like to be added to the distribution list for the committee.
All right, thank you. Okay, it looks like this was updated, but I don't think Jerry's here. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. All right, so we will not cover that. All right, thank you. Looks like maybe Glenn has an announcement. And this is time for announcements. So go for it, Glenn.
Okay, I can do that, but actually I had a question for Charles on the tree.
Oh, okay, go ahead.
So since City Council voted for the CFAC so that means there's a council file number? Would that be correct assumption?
So there were two, yes, there is. But the council file is just, there was a request done by city council to have CFAC do a report back on the Board of Forestry's Zone 0 proposal. And that was submitted, and city council then accepted it and said they're going to support it. I don't know if a separate motion was done saying they support the report back, but the report back was based on a motion. Yes.
Okay, so I just want to suggest perhaps the council file number and any link or anything could be put into chat just to share that, because that's the way we can look up this information.
Sure. Let me dig that up.
Okay, so since I was invited to an announcement, I'll go ahead and do that. So Neighborhood Council Budget Advocates, we've started meeting with all of the city departments, or at least as many of the 40+ city departments that we were able to get appointments for. So that's happening now for the next several weeks. If you have any interest, your favorite department, you want to be part of the team and they haven't already met, contact the Budget Advocates, specifically Barbara Ringette. She can connect you up with the team. Even if the meeting with the department has happened and you want to provide some input for the report that you want certain issues covered, you can do the same thing as far as connecting up with that. Also, I did want everyone, and this is regarding the upcoming budget, the new one. Just want to let you know that on last Monday, the Mayor Bass released her budget letter to all the city departments. And it's 12 pages and more detailed than usual, or at least for what the public sees. And it is posted on her website. So I just want you all to be aware of that. Is the request that each department has to respond to as they prepare their budgets. And also, just so you know, the deadline for them to submit their budgets is November 18th. And then that starts the process going with the evaluations, the meetings, discussions, etc. So that's my update. Thanks.
Thank you. Our next event is going to be a special and unique one. I don't know if all of you folks know Melanie Winter. She's the director of the River Project. And we are going to hold an event honoring her the afternoon of Saturday, November 22nd. And it will be our very first fundraiser. It was not initially thought of as that way, but it was the only way that she agreed that we honor her. So we had a compromise, basically. We said, we want to honor you. And she said, that sounds awkward and strange. And she said, but I'll let you honor me if you make it a fundraiser for you. And we said, okay, that sounds fair. So we're going to do that. So we are just figuring it out. We don't know much more than that right now, except for that it will be at the Los Rios State Park, where we had an event that Charles put together, gosh, I guess about a year ago. So more to come, but save the date and we'll have more information for you in the near future, we hope, because it's around the corner. Any other announcements? Okay. Wow, this is our first time ending early ever, actually. But we can do it. Unless anybody wants to share anything from their neighborhood council, any sustainability efforts, questions, challenges, things you want to share, best practices, things you want us to know about. This is an opportunity for networking. On the other hand, it's an opportunity to end early and get 15 minutes of your life back. So there's that too. Oh yes, and please complete the evaluation. Thank you guys for putting that in the chat. All right. Well, thank you folks for joining. It's always great to see you and hear you and have you join us. And take care. And good night.
Bye, everybody.
Good night, everyone.